This presentation will introduce a concrete case of problem explication based on a computer game example. The context here is MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, in which lots of people play together and interact with each other in some virtual world, typically a fantasy world or a science fiction world. Each player takes on the role of some character and embarks on different adventures, often combating monsters or completing quests. If you're new to these MMORPGs, please have a look at the link at the bottom of this slide. Here is again a diagram of the design research process. We're going to look at the first activity here, Explicate problem, which is about investigating and analyzing a practical problem. And here you ask the question, what is the problem experienced by some stakeholders of a practice, and why is it important? This diagram shows what happens in the activity of explicating a problem. The input is an initial problem, the arrow from the left, and this problem can be vague and hard to understand. The output of the activity is an explicated or clarified problem, the arrow to the right, and this problem should be more precisely formulated. To carry out the activity, scientific methods are needed, but also practice-based approaches. This is the arrow from the top. And you need to use the foundational knowledge to define and clarify, explicate the problem, and this is shown by the arrow from the bottom. Here is an example of an initial problem. Players don't play MMORPGs as they should. Okay, this sounds problematic. People in some practice could perceive this problem, it hurts them, so it looks like a problem, but it is very vague, impressionistic. It's hard to tell what it really means, and this vagueness also means that it's difficult to say what you can do about it. It's even hard to start somewhere. Where should you start in order to address this problem? You need to explicate it, to define it more precisely, to position it and justify it and find its root causes. The first subactivity is about defining the problem precisely. That is to delimit and formulate the problem so that it becomes less ambiguous, so that stakeholders understand it in the same way. And here is the initial problem again. Players don't play MMORPGs as they should. And of course, this problem and this problem formulation is very vague. It can be interpreted and understood in many different ways. Please think about the different interpretations before you move on to the next slide. Here are a few possible interpretations of this initial problem. Players are not polite to each other, players don't interact with each other, players level very slowly, players don't buy in-game items, and players don't fulfill their quests. All of these interpretations, all of them are compatible with the original initial problem, but they are indeed quite different from each other, and they would probably also require very different solutions. For the rest of this presentation, we will look into the last of these new problem formulations. Players don't complete their quests. And here a quest is a task in some computer game where a single character or a group of characters complete in order to gain some reward, and this reward could be loot or money or access to new locations or more experience or some combinations of all of these. And again, if you are new to MMORPGs and quests, you can have a look at the small video here at the bottom bottom of the slide in order to get more feeling for quests. The next activity is position and justify. And here you clarify in which practice the problem occurs and why it is important and worthwhile to address it. First, you need to position the problem, that is, describe its context. So you need to answer in which practice does the problem appear, who are the stakeholders of the practice, what's the purpose of the practice, what are the main activities, what's the environment, and what are the negative consequences of not addressing the problem. And for our example, the practice is that of playing MMORPGs. The stakeholders are primarily the players that are actually playing, but it's also the company providing the gaming platform. And inside the company, there will be game developers and shareholders and possibly other stakeholders. And about purpose, there might be different purposes for different stakeholders. For the players, the purpose is mainly to have fun, but it can also be to gain status in the player community. But the company has another purpose, primarily to make a profit. The main activities for the players, that would be to explore the game world, do quests, fight monsters, progress through leveling and collecting valuable items and interacting with each other. And please take a little time and think about what are the main activities of the company. For the environment, it might be argued that for a computer game, there isn't really an environment. The game itself is a self-contained world. Please think about whether this is really a satisfactory answer or not. There might be some problems with it. And for the negative consequences, they also differ between different stakeholders. For the players, it is mainly that they will not progress as fast as desired, and the gameplay might not be as fun as they would like to. For the company, negative consequence is a lower profit if the players are not satisfied, if they lose interest in the game. When you have positioned the problem, it's time to justify it, to ensure that it's appropriate for design research. And there are then 4 issues to address. First, the problem should feel important to stakeholders, for example, that people are hurt by the problem or that the problem causes a lot of costs. Secondly, the problem should be of general interest. It shouldn't be important only for one single person or one single company. It should be important in many places and in many situations. Thirdly, the problem should be challenging. There shouldn't already exist good solutions to it. And finally, but optionally, a good problem is original, so no one has really thought about the problem earlier. And here are some possible arguments in our case. First, the problem is significant because players have less fun than desired or expected, and the company doesn't make as much money as it would desire. The problem is of general interest. It's not just of interest for one single MMORPG or just some single user. It's more general in its character. It's definitely a challenging problem. The problem has been recognized many times and it persists, though many have tried to solve it. Well, it's probably not an original problem, but that is optional. The third subactivity is to find root causes. That is to identify other problems that underlie and cause the initial problem. The symptom is that players don't complete their quests, and our task is to identify the root causes for this symptom. And there might of course be many different root causes. One way to identify some of these, please have a look at this little video for some ideas. Well, one possible root cause is that quests can be quite dull and boring and uninteresting, just taking a lot of time. So players are not motivated. And this root cause may give rise to the symptom that players don't complete their quests. And to summarize, here is how we moved from an initial to an explicated problem. We started with a very vague initial problem. Players don't play MMORPGs as they should. We then narrowed this problem down, we made it more precise, and we chose to address the problem of players don't complete their quests. We then positioned and justified this problem, and we identified root causes, two of them. Quests are boring and players are not motivated. And this is now the explicated problem, and it's much easier to address this problem, to do something about it, than it is to do something about the original initial problem.